The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives. We are taking a look at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking. We are not afraid to give you the honest truth. And today, Polly Tommey is back. You all have so many questions. We decided we would do a second episode with your questions. And it's always fun answering your questions and giving you the best that I can.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here, Dr. Thomas. Okay, just to remind our viewers that we've moved on from just questions from the unvaccinated. We're getting a lot of questions from those parents who are on the fence. They're kind of earing a bit towards, I think I will vaccinate, but they're still coming to us with questions. So we've got to be very grateful for that and support them.
Yes.
So, question number one. Which vaccines are the most important and which are the most dangerous?
That's a loaded question, Polly. Probably 20 years ago, I would have had an easy time saying, well, this one's more important than that one. In fact, I did that. I wrote the vaccine-friendly plan where I prioritized, it's still possible to get whooping cough, so you should get the pertussis one. It's possible to get meningitis, so get your Hib and your Prevnar. Obviously, it's possible to get measles, even though nobody was dying of measles, so maybe get that one, and staggering them and going slow so you minimize toxicity. Now fast forward to the fact that I had a practice for 14 years where I gave true informed consent, and parents many times were choosing not to vaccinate at all. And that resulted in my study, the Vaxxed Unvaxxed. And wow, what we discovered was that the vaccinated, even vaccine-friendly plan. Here's what most people may not know about that study. I did not have CDC vaccinated patients in my practice. I only had essentially vaccine-friendly plan or even slower than that. And yet when we compared those kids to completely unvaccinated kids, we saw 4 to 5 times, sometimes more, of all the allergy autoimmunity conditions, so asthma, eczema, urticaria, which is hives, allergic reactions. We also had 4 to 5 times more developmental delay issues, behavioral issues, ADD, ADHD. There was actually no ADD or ADHD in the unvaxxed population, which was a mind blower. Other studies have shown that same finding. But here's the real surprise, I think. I mean, I was already getting a clue to this, but the vaccinated, even vaccine friendly, so even if you just pick the few that you think are most important, had way more infections of all kinds: sinus infections, ear infections, lung infections, skin infections, GI infections, you name it. So that was like the big wake-up call. It's like, okay, so which vaccines are most important? Essentially none. They're all more dangerous than doing nothing. And let me just touch on that, Polly. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but this is important. I've mentioned it before. Vaccine trials have not used a placebo, proper saline placebo, for any of the vaccines on the childhood schedule. The trials are extremely short, 3 to 5 days for the hepatitis B trial. The sample sizes are often tiny, so these trials are not significant or even should have been published. And then they don't look at all health outcomes. I mean, we now have over 10 studies where there's a comparison between vaxxed and unvaxxed. And they're not, when you look at all health outcomes, it's like the vaccinated are not doing well and the unvaxxed are so much safer. So you have to look at benefits versus harm. When you do that, none of them seem worthy of being considered, to be honest. Now, the second part of your question, which is more dangerous, that's pretty easy to answer. The COVID shot, which shouldn't even be called a vaccine, that is an mRNA product that triggers the body to spike the actual toxin that is so deadly and harmful in so many ways. That should never have been brought to market. It's ridiculous, and yet they still are offering it and encouraging people to get it. It's free. Come to the pharmacy. We'll give it to you for free. That's crazy. Prior to that one, it was the HPV, human papillomavirus, that was rolled out supposedly to prevent cancer. Cancer from HPV takes decades to develop. That vaccine, it's been a couple, 2, 3 decades now, but it's still, there is no evidence that it has reduced cancer. In fact, I cover this in my book, Facts, and it's been covered by others. You are more likely to get cancer if you take the HPV vaccine. It's one of those Merck vaccines that has the horrible aluminum, and it is destroying fertility. It's causing ovarian failure. It's causing a massive increase in autoimmunity and, of course, death. So that was my least favorite prior to the COVID. And then prior to the HPV, it was the hepatitis B, especially for children, especially for newborns. We've known for over a decade, there's a 300% increase in autism in boys who get the hepatitis B shot as a newborn. It's just a really bad vaccine. On top of that, nobody, as far as kids, are dying of hepatitis B. None, zero. So you're giving a dangerous shot for a disease that they're not at risk for. You get hepatitis B from sex and IV drug use. That one's insane.
If people are concerned, just go and get an insert, a real insert to any of the jabs out there, and you will be literally horrified about the side effects. I mean, type 1 diabetes all over the place, death.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific. Another mother asking about SIDS is, do you think, Dr. Thomas, and we've just had Neil Miller on CHGTV saying that 99.9% of SIDS is vaccine death?
I absolutely agree. So Neil Miller did write the most important paper where he collected the 6 studies that were in the world literature, published. They're not retracted. These are valid studies. These were the only ones where they actually looked at SIDS and compared it to when they were vaccinated, because all the other studies about SIDS, they don't even consider the variable of vaccines. So if you don't consider it, you're not going to find a connection. And what he found was that in over 80% of, if you combine all those studies together, SIDS happened in the first 7 days after a vaccine. In another data set, 97% happened in the first 10 days after a vaccine, and the other 3% in the next 10 days. That's where he can say with confidence that basically 100% of SIDS is happening from the vaccines. Because if you look at the week to 10 days prior to a vaccine, there's 0 SIDS. You know, we give vaccines at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and most of the SIDS is happening after the 2-month visit, after the 4-month visit, or after the 6-month visit. And this is tragic. I know, Paul, you were on the bus. You've talked to too many parents who gave you that same story. They took their healthy child in for a well visit, and within a day or 2 or 3 after the vaccines, they were holding a dead child. It's absolutely tragic. And the system, they are trying to minimize the appearance of SIDS being related to vaccines by, it's really sad what's happening out there. They will, the coroners, so if an infant dies, they've got to go get an autopsy. Well, the doctors who are doing these autopsies do not have a code. It was removed in the 70s, I think. This is criminal. They don't have a code to say that this death happened due to vaccines. So they don't even ask. And this is why the data is just buried. But there is a movement now. I think Florida just passed a law that they have to ask about vaccine status. So hopefully we're going to start getting better data. But what happens, unfortunately, so these coroners, the doctors who are doing the autopsies, are saying that the SIDS was due to something else. So it was due to suffocation. It was due to co-sleeping. And parents then are blamed and sometimes have their children removed from them. So they just had a baby die from vaccination. And then they lose their other kids, and their dads who are in prison who are blamed for killing that baby. They have this shaken baby syndrome, which is just another nonsense, because it's the vaccine that's killing these babies, and then the parent gets accused of shaking the baby and killing him. So yeah, parents, please, 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 please be aware. SIDS is a massive problem, and it is actually vaccine-caused death. And here's the thing. You know, for every disease in the United States for which we have a vaccine, if you add all the deaths from those diseases per year, it's less than 50 a year in the entire country of 300 million people, 100 million children. Less than 50. Guess how many deaths are just from SIDS? It's over 2,000 a year. And it's probably 4,000 to 6,000 because of the way they're hiding the data. So vaccines are killing infants and young children at a rate that's probably about 100 times. It's just insanity.
And the other question is, you know, that gets screamed at so-called anti-vaxxers, What about polio? Do you want polio to come back? Is that what you want? And here's the thing, and you ask them then, I always throw the question and say, what is polio? And they go, it's crippling. It's where a child is just crippled and is in a wheelchair and needs an iron lung. Well, that's called a ventilator now. And I've never seen, when I was growing up, I'd never even heard of autism or any crippling diseases, but the very, very occasional. So I think whatever polio is, has never been so rampant right now as it
Yeah.
is in America as it was before. So I hate that question.
Yeah, Suzanne Humphreys' book Dissolving Illusions did a master job of pointing out that, all sorts of things. We now have close to 100 different conditions that were called polio back in the day. They only had one label for anybody that had any kind of paralysis or anything like that. And doctors were highly trained to diagnose it. And then as soon as they rolled out the polio vaccine campaign, they changed the definition for polio. It used to be any paralysis counted. Then they changed the definition. You need to have paralysis that lasts 2 months. Well, most polio, whatever they were calling polio, most paralysis resolves on its own within a couple weeks, month at the most. So just by changing the definition, they eliminated polio. The World Health Organization did the same thing in India. I remember reading this paper written by some Indian pediatricians, and one year there were 50,000 cases of polio in India. This is a decade or two ago. And the World Health Organization rolled in and they did a massive polio campaign. And the next year there was zero polio. But guess what? There was 51,000 cases of non-polio paralytic disease. So their vaccine campaign had not done a thing. They just changed the definition. And what they did in that case was doctors were required to submit samples to the state lab or the country's lab in order to call it polio. Well, they didn't set the system up, so no samples were ever sent. Polio was eradicated. Smoke and mirrors.
This question I really like for a number of reasons. And this question is, what if one of you're married, you have kids, and one of you wants to vaccinate and the other one doesn't? And before you answer that, for some weird reason, the cases of this happening in New York and New Jersey were unbelievable. And when you go and get divorced, the court favored whichever one it was, the one that vaccinated kids. So here's my big warning to you all out there. Be careful who you marry or your kids marry. Make sure you know what's going on with the vaccine situation, tightly locked in, and don't get divorced.
You bring up a good point, Polly. I deal with this when I coach parents fairly often, too often, and you're absolutely right. It is the informed parent who understands vaccine risks who is usually at risk of losing custody of their child because the system, including the courts and most judges, favor the concept that vaccination is the responsible thing to do. So yes, be careful who you marry. I know of people in my world, and you probably do too, Polly, who's young adults who are not getting married to somebody who wants to vaccinate or choosing not to have children because of this very issue. When you understand the harm that can be caused by vaccines. Now, if you are living in a state that does not have a philosophical or religious exemption, that's California, New York, West Virginia, Maine. NVIC.org has that list and keeps it up to date. But if you are in one of those states, and of course, New York and California are very high population states, unfortunately, you are going to lose if you're the non-vaccinating parent because it is state law that you're supposed to vaccinate. So you're actually even going against the law. Now, if you're in any other state, you can get the right attorney who can prove that, first of all, you have not been a negligent parent. You are following the law. It is your right not to vaccinate. It's in the code of the law, meaning it's safe not to do so, or they wouldn't allow that. But you have to have the right attorney, and we can guide you on that if the time were to come.
Yeah, but it's been some really nasty, disturbing stories that we've done on that. So people, please be aware. Show them Vax 2. And if the girlfriend or boyfriend doesn't agree with Vax 2, you're going to have to move on and find someone else. Okay? I was
I agree.
hanging out in chiropractic circles or something like that. Right. Okay. Next question. And it's a good question, although I would answer probably different to you. But let's see what happens. So if I'm traveling to high risk countries, should I vaccinate my family before I go to a high risk country? And can I just say, This is actually quite interesting. When I was in England, they regard Mexico as a high-risk country. Over here, people just hop over to. I think they're playing us on what a high-risk country is so they can sell their vaccines to you. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Well, you're absolutely right, Polly. So I grew up in Africa and I was in a village for several years. There were a couple infant deaths in that time era that I was there, and infant mortality in some of these countries is much higher than, say, industrialized countries. Although, folks, this is an aside to the question, but the US has one of the highest, not one of, we have the highest infant mortality of industrialized countries in the world. Guess what? We have the highest infant vaccination rate in the world also. They are linked. Remember, we just talked about SIDS. But here's what I say to those who are fearful of travel. It is not the diseases for which we have vaccines that are killing these kids in these developing countries or impoverished nations or whatever. It is dysentery. These children do not have access to clean water. They do not have access to IV fluids. If they get a really severe case of vomiting and diarrhea, cholera was very commonly one of the causes. There's not a vaccine for cholera, and even if there was, it probably wouldn't work very well. But regardless, when your child is that sick and they cannot be rehydrated, that's what was killing these kids, not the diseases for which we have vaccines. Dr. Abiy in Guinea-Bissau did the study, published it, I think, in 2013, that showed that girls who were vaccinated with the DPT, which they're still doing in Africa, by the way, were 10 times more likely to die of all causes. So while you might have slightly less diphtheria, tetanus, or pertussis, overall mortality was 10 times higher. This is just smoke and mirrors, folks. These vaccines are harming children. They're not providing any benefit, basically whatsoever. And certainly the harm is far greater than the benefit, if there is a slight benefit.
I don't like this next question. I don't even like answering, but I'm going to say it because it's important. Well, it's important, I guess, that the people want the answers to these questions, but how to safely catch up if we must meet school requirements? Homeschool.
You're spot on. Those states that we were just talking about, California, New York, and the few others that don't have anything but a medical exemption. And parents, I have been stuck with having to coach parents sometimes with this very issue, Polly, and it's not fun because, as you do, I know the risks of vaccinating, and they're so great that it makes me very uncomfortable to recommend anything. But as general guidelines, first of all, if at all possible, you move. For those families that can't move, you homeschool. If you can't homeschool, there are pods. There are school-like programs. They don't qualify as a school because they don't have enough contact hours, but your child can get good schooling, if you will, where they don't insist on vaccination. Sometimes it's a bit underground in some states, so you can find solutions. Now, I recently, in the past year, had to coach one mom who said, I have to do something or I'm going to lose custody of my kids. And it's that same dilemma. And here's what I was saying. At that point, her child was 2 years old. And I said, wait longer if you can. Keep stalling. The longer you wait, the less harmful the vaccines. They're always harmful, but they're most harmful if given when very young. They're most harmful if given multiple at the same time. So you wait as long as possible. And the nice thing about waiting is some of them, like the Hib and the Prevnar, if you're over 2 years old, you only need one instead of four. So you can significantly reduce the number that way. Always only do one at a time if you're going to have to do that. And, I have a theory, but I don't have proof. There's no data on this. The schools all require the MMR, right? Measles, mumps, rubella. And Polly, you've heard all the stories as I did in my practice. I heard hundreds of stories of families who, after the MMR, lost their children to severe nonverbal autism. What I think, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, Polly, if you had a situation like we just talked about where the mom's going, if I don't do it, I lose my kid, and then it's even worse because he's going to go do all of them at once. I happen to suspect that if one did the MMR first, wait till at least 3, but preferably 5. Also delay when you start school, you skip kindergarten or whatever. I think if it was done first before the body's loaded up with aluminum, it would be safer. But that's just a theory. I don't have data. Do you have any thoughts about that, Polly?
Well, I mean, I don't have the same thoughts as you because my son only had the MMR that day when he was
Yeah.
in. Look, this is what I say to parents. Look, I know you want your children to go to school and you may have to have your children to go to school so you can work, but know this, if your child takes a catch-up vaccine and gets injured or dies or gets injured, you're going to have to come out of work anyway and be the carer for that child. You have to get together with like-minded individuals. They're everywhere. You just go on the chat of CHD TV, they'll help you. But you've got to try and find a way out. There's always a way out, but it's not worth putting your child at risk. So you can keep your job. I know you've got to pay your bills. I get all of that, but there is a way out that doesn't hurt your child. And ultimately, I believe that everybody who has a vaccine has somehow injured themselves to where they were before. And that's just a mother talking. That's not Dr. Thomas or anyone else. I just think people who say, oh, my child's fine, he's had loads of vaccines. How do you know that he wouldn't have been way better, or she could have been way better, or that little bit of gut issues that she has, or those tiny little seizures that you think are genetic? How do you know that they wouldn't have been a ton better before they had the vaccine? So it's not worth the risk, Dr. Thomas. As a mother, I'm speaking. I know you have to be careful as Dr. Thomas.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And the only reason that question, I'm sure, was asked is because there are people who really feel stuck. And so they're just wondering, is there a way? I coach on that, kidsfirstforever.com, if people are stuck. And but yes, what you're saying, Polly, is spot on. You can't take it out. Once you put that vaccine in, it can't come out.
Tell us about that coaching that you do, because I don't think people know enough about that. You and Dee Dee do this, don't you?
Sure, yeah. People can coach with either of us. I'm more expensive, so if you want to coach with Dee Dee, you can get a discount, and I'm usually right there beside her anyway. Kidsfirstforever.com. You just sign up for the coaching session you want, and I coach mostly on vaccines. Dee Dee coaches more on communication. She's very God-guided, and she can help. Basically, I've seen her help almost anything. I mean, just recently coached a mom and now a dad who had anxiety beyond anxiety. I mean, these parents are so nervous about what's going on with the vaccine question and all of that. And she can really help with that. I tackle all these vaccine questions all the time. And I mean, I talk to people around the world. It's sort of what I've done. Most of my career is really focused in on this issue because we were misled, so extremely misled. I was too. And so, once you know what you know, you can't unknow it. And that's part of why, Polly and I are here talking to you all. That's what CHD is about. And by the way, their online magazine, The Defender, is an incredible resource. If you have any question that might be vaccine related, just find that little hourglass question, enter it in, and there are articles and articles written about it that are well referenced.
Dr. Thomas, I'm going to change the subject a little bit because we are getting at CHD TV a lot of psychotropic drug injuries and deaths, a lot of deaths from children. And so this one mother told me that her 4-year-old, she went to her pediatrician and said, he's not sleeping great. He gets huge anxiety, really just asking for tips of how to get their child to go to sleep. And the pediatrician wanted to give him high-level psychotropic drugs. That can't be right. Is this a new thing where they're getting paid? I mean, you may not know, but it's very concerning.
Yeah, I don't think doctors are directly getting paid for writing prescriptions, but we are, I'm retired, but back when I was in the trenches, we are constantly bombarded by drug reps who are promoting and pushing their product. And doctors, unfortunately, right since medical school, you have 2 years of basic science training where you really learn how the body works. And then it's like a flipped switch. Now all you're doing is labeling and treating. So you got to figure out what label to give the patient, and then you got to pull out your prescription pad. Well, now it's on the computer, and write a prescription. And that's really what doctors are trained to do. They are no longer trained to think outside the box, what's really going on. And anxiety is rampant, and even at young ages. And instead of figuring out the root cause, why is this child anxious? Maybe their parents are watching the news. That would make me anxious. Maybe the parents are anxious. That makes a kid anxious. Obviously, we live in a toxic world, and that creates anxiety. Poor sleep increases anxiety. Stress of all kinds increases anxiety. You deal with all those things and some good sleep hygiene, and you shouldn't need a psychotropic drug to help your child sleep. It's most adults shouldn't need a psychotropic drug either, and yet many are on multiple things to help them sleep.
And let's just talk about the dangers of screen time, which we did not have in our day, Dr. Thomas, when we were bringing up our children.
Yep.
So now I can see the anxiety for some kids because the parents are so I'm talking about the parents, not the kids now. The parents are fixated on their phones. They are addicted to it, that their children are not getting any attention. And I know that's not many of our viewers. We all live in this like crunchy world, but you see it out there in restaurants. The children are trying to get their parents' attention. No, they're not. The parents are addicted.
Screen time is destroying our brains. So the programmers who put together social media, who put together games, I mean, video games, it's mostly men, but some women too. Young boys are so addicted to video games, by the time they're young adults, they cannot disconnect. And they might be up all night playing video games because it's the only way to keep their mind from unraveling, I guess. It's tragic. Well, the people who develop these apps develop them specifically to be addictive. And so it's a real problem because basically think about it. When you have rapid fire responses with a visual thing, whether it's a game or you're scrolling through social media, it's little hits of dopamine, which feel good in small doses. But when you do this repeatedly, you deplete your dopamine. It's almost like, I mean, the worst drug for depleting dopamine is meth. So if you've ever known how meth addicts are, I mean, meth supposedly is, I'm an addiction specialist. I was board certified for 10 years in addiction medicine, and meth has 100 times the potency of morphine. That's how much dopamine it pushes out of your receptors in your brain. And apparently it feels like the best high euphoria you could ever experience. Unfortunately, you will crash because when you've depleted all that dopamine, it takes time to build it back. And while you're crashing, you're the most depressed you've ever been. And it's a disaster. Well, video games, it's putting you into that little dopamine constant over and over and over again until you're so depleted you're in trouble and you need more stimulation just to feel normal. And so it's a real problem. It's basically, think about how we were wired as animals, fight or flight, right? If there's a massive stress, you're about to be attacked by a bear or something, you fight or you run or you freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. And you see animals do this, but that's momentary. With these video games and the online stimulation and all of that, you're in fight or flight constantly, and that will absolutely destroy your brain function and your sense of well-being. And yeah, it's a massive problem.
It is a massive problem. We need to do more on it because the tantrums these parents can't control their kids. If they take their tablet or whatever it is away, they are screaming, they're violent. We've even got some children who have shot their parents. So more to come on that, I hope, from you, Dr. Thomas, if possible, please.
Yes, you bet.
It was fun doing this show with you again. Thank you for answering these questions.
Oh, thank you, Polly. I always enjoy doing shows with you, and we welcome the comments and questions from viewers. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a blessed week.
My name's Jenny Funderburk.
And how many children do you have?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys. And how old are they now?
They're 23 and 21.
And is this about both of your boys or one of your boys?
It's really about my oldest. It's the 23-year-old.
So 23 years old. Okay.
So he was born in 2000.
So let's go all the way back to when you were pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a conversation with anyone about vaccines?
No.
Didn't even think about it?
No, I didn't even think about it. I just knew that I would get them their shots and everything that the doctors told me to do. My child was not going to be a statistic or a sick child.
Yeah, death by mumps or measles or whatever, blind by measles, whatever it is. Yeah,
right.
We're told.
Right.
Okay, so I don't think they had pregnancy vaccines back then. Did you have any?
I want to say that I might have gotten a flu shot when I was pregnant. I don't remember, but I feel like maybe I did.
Okay. So when he was born, how was he?
When he was born, he was 9 pounds, 1 ounce. Let's see, they had to take him by cesarean. It was like 39 and a half weeks, and he was measuring really big, and so they tried to induce me, and I was on Pitocin for 2 days, never anything, no dilation, anything. So on the 3rd day, they were like, we just have to give a C-section, but that was, okay. I got my baby, he was healthy, he was fine, he was big. I thought, oh, he's robust, he's strong, he's beautiful. He was a beautiful baby.
And did he get Hep B and vitamin K?
Yes.
Okay. And so you followed the schedule as told.
Exactly as told.
So when did you start to see any issues?
After, I felt like he was a normal baby the first 12 months, and then he went and got his 12-month shots. Okay. I think he got some shots at 15 months, probably 18 months, but from 12 months on, he never really kept developing. Like he didn't speak, he never talked. 18 months, he really wasn't talking. 2 years, all my friends that had kids the same age were like practically speaking sentences, and I asked my pediatrician, like, what's wrong? Why isn't he talking? And he said, oh, a lot of times boys are late in talking, and don't worry about it, he's a boy, he'll be fine. So we waited a few more months, like probably like 2.5, and it's like, he's still not talking, and they kept saying, don't worry, it's not vaccines. We did, at that point, my husband had saw something online, and he said, ask the pediatrician about autism and stuff, and he assured me that no, that's been debunked. There is no evidence that autism is caused by vaccines. You're doing everything right, you're fine. But if you want, you can go have him evaluated somewhere. So we went and had him evaluated, and they originally diagnosed him with PDD and OS. And then we took him to another doctor in Vanderbilt that specialized in late talking children. And they said, oh no, he's not autistic, he's just late in talking. And so we were like, okay, great, he's not autistic, or PDD and OS, which is, to me, is the same thing as autism, right? So we worked on getting him speech therapy and just worked really hard to try to get him to talk. He had a lot of problems with gastro enterology. He had encopresis. He was withholding. He was like trying to withhold.
Just like constipation?
Yeah, but like little bits would come out, and he was constantly in a diaper rash. He constantly had ear infections. When he went to school, when he went to kindergarten, he was still in pull-ups. He had an aide. They wanted to put him in a special ed class where they're by themselves, and they basically are just sitting there babysitting him, and we fought to keep him in the mainstream, but he wasn't potty trained, he wasn't speaking. Then he repeated kindergarten. He finally did start talking, but he's definitely autistic. So I have to think it was something with the childhood vaccines, because what else affects you as much as being injected directly into your tissues with toxic chemicals, which I didn't know at the time. I just followed what my doctor told me to do. Now he's an adult, and he works as a bagger at Publix. They hire a lot of special needs people, so he bags people's groceries about 20 hours a week. I mean, he lives with us, probably will live with us. So it's just...
But what about your second child? Because it sounds like you didn't figure it out in time to stop vaccinating.
We didn't. No, we didn't realize what was going on. We had the second boy, and of course we were worried, like, is he going to talk? Is something going to be wrong with him? But he was normal. Now, he had all the same shots, the same schedule and everything as Jackson did. But he always has suffered with some generalized anxiety and now OCD, which I can't pinpoint what caused that either, but they both have a OCD really bad right now.
Speak now?
Yeah, he talks. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, he talks.
It's
yeah.
nice when you can hear the voice.
Yeah.
There's one point we wonder if we're ever going to.
He's yeah. I remember crying at the speech therapist, thinking he's never going to talk. And oh yes, he will one day. Now he kind of talks nonstop. He doesn't know when to not talk. He'll just keep going on and on. He gets fixated on things. Sometimes he talks too much or repeats a lot. He repeats a lot. Things like that. He's very smart. He even drives, has his license. He's intelligent, but it's like he's trapped inside this prison of the social impairment, and he sees the outside world, right? It's like you're looking through a window and you can see where everybody else in my high school is going to prom, and everybody else is going to the dorms and getting checked in for college, and everybody else is doing all these things, and I've never even had a girlfriend. I don't have really any friends. It's like being trapped. You're just close enough that you can see what everybody else in the world is doing, but you don't quite have what it takes to participate in the world.
Let's talk as two mothers with children of the same ilk, if you like, about, and I don't think we talk about this enough, about how painful it is as a mother when your son doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
It's really painful, because friends are a joy in life. What would we do without friends?
Yeah. Very painful. He wants a girlfriend more than anything. He actually has like an imaginary family that he talks to me about, his wife and his kids. And he has their names and he tells me about them. I mean, he wants more than anything to be married and be a father and have a family. And like in my mind, I mean, I just listen to him, and he talks to me because I'm the only one who will like actually listen. Like his father's kind of like, don't talk about that, that's weird, whereas I just let him engage. I just let him dream, I know that it's odd, but that's his dream, and in my mind I'm like, that's never gonna happen. I don't see him getting married. I can't even see him working full time, because he has the OCD so bad now too that it's debilitating. So, but yeah,
it's a very hard journey we're on. It's a very painful one.
Yeah.
Stop.
When you see everybody else's kids are off to prom and college, and we're just here. I mean, he's certainly fine to live with us for the rest of his life, but what happens when we're gone? That's the number one thing that you worry about, is their future when you're gone, because grandparents will be gone. He does have his brother. That's about it. So.
Thank you for being so honest, and I know there's people watching now that are just thanking you for what we're all going through, the same thing. We are adult children.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do with all these adults? I don't understand why. It's like an epidemic, but they don't do anything. No one in our government or medical community is addressing this.
And who's going to love them like we do, have the patience we do, know what triggers our sons, know how to keep them calm, all those things that we've been doing since they were born, or since they were injured.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page, all of us.
I mean, he was such a beautiful baby, and we just thought of all these things he would do, and play sports and be everything he could be, but nothing that we were thinking of has happened. It's just all been totally different, and it's hard to just be like, oh, well, this is what God gave us, and be grateful. I don't think God gave us that. I think someone told us that he needed all these vaccines and all this stuff, and they're making money, and our child's life is not what it should be. It's beautiful, and he's beautiful in so many ways. He's such a blessing. But I mean, he doesn't want this life, and I don't want it for him. But there's nothing I can do now.
I mean, it's like, what would I do to reverse it? At this point, there's nothing.
And so the reason you're sitting here, I know the reason, because I know your life, is because you're warning other people of the horrors and their horrors of vaccinating.
Yeah. It's dream crushing. It crushes you.
Thank you so much. It's hard. I know it's hard. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so honest.
Of course. Thank you for having me.